I don't know where. Hello there. Hello there. Good morning, doom scrollers. I'm a bit late. It's like we had a we had a contract or anything, but I'm a bit late by my own schedule. Um, what is this? This is day 12 of a 20-day live challenge. I'm gonna be real with you. I'm gonna be honest with you, okay? My my enthusiasm for this experiment is definitely waning. I mean, I didn't expect it to be consistent all the way through, but yeah, I think I that's the problem about reaching a bit of a high arc at some point, which I did on day 10. I definitely felt like I was sort of hitting my stride. And this is day 12 of coming on live every single day, unrehearsed, and basically just talking into the camera and sharing my heart. So I've also noticed that I've been talking way too long, longer than I kind of meant to. I mean, this whole project, this whole experiment, when I hand it out to other people, the idea is just to talk for 5 or 10 minutes max. I've been talking for like 20 minutes minimum, and 40 minutes was the longest. It was way too long. But it's definitely paid dividends in so far as I've like learned a few important things. Like there is actually a lot of wisdom that I reflected on. And if you go back and look at day 10, day 10's video is where I give five things that I learned so far from this, and they were good things to learn. But I'm gonna be real with you, man. If you're tuning in today, you're not gonna get much from me because it's who have we got? We've got Sean. Hey, Sean. Now you see, suddenly I have to pick up and I have to like bring my A game. Sean and Chetan are both here. I was just about to say how I feel a bit wiped out and bummed out, and I don't really have any magic to bring. Then people show up, and then I'm watching myself real time now, so I'm just giving you a running commentary of what's happening inside of me. Like I immediately go, "Now, come on, man, Rocket, you can do it. You can say something." So the first thing you'll notice is I'm out and about. I'm out and about in the lovely area called Lake Munga. Now, that's the English name for it. And to my shame, I don't have recalled the Aboriginal name. There's a local Nyungar name. And basically what the name means is this is a place of gathering. And it's the lowest catchment area in this valley. And obviously the first peoples used to come here and they used to use it as a gathering place for themselves, because it was also where all the animals still gather here. It's a kind of preserved wetland. There's pelicans here. There's ducks and geese and moorhens and all sorts of other things with wings. But they used to gather here as well. And once upon a time, I had an idea to do a walking tour up through this little part of town called Subiaco. And it starts here and it ends up at the top of town. Now, if I turn the camera, you may be able to see, I don't know if you can, just peeping through there around about here, you'll actually see Perth City. It's across the water here. There's actually water just in front of me here. Anyway, so I was prattling on about how I actually don't feel up for anything. I don't have anything to say. But since folks are here, I think I isn't it so funny? I want to put on a good sesh for you. I want to make sure that that you walk away from this feeling that you got something like net positive. I learned a funny thing in my youth. I used to make fun of celery. I didn't like celery very much, and I found somebody said somewhere celery is I think it's net zero in calories. In fact, it takes you more energy to eat the celery than it gives you back in return. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but sometimes I feel some conversations are like that. Nietzsche, I think it was, who said, "I hate who steals my solitude, and in return gives me no true company. I hate who steals my solitude, and in return gives me no true company." And man, fuck, so many conversations in reality are like that. We're just stepping through some awkward social repertoire of meaningless sounds that we trade to each other, and it's an effort for both people, and both people walk away net negative from that exchange, and I don't want to do that. But I'm also wrestling with this idea that I'm supposed to be just coming on here and just letting whatever flows flow, and I have to show up as my authentic self, and my authentic self is bummed out today, man. It's just a bit bummed out. I'm a subscriber to the animist worldview. I'm a subscriber to the high-minded understanding of Hermetic philosophy, which lets me understand the logos and the precision by which the world is created. But there's another whole flip side of that coin, and that's this, that we're in relationship with a living cosmos, and that there is forms of agency and intelligence and consciousness which we don't have good names for anymore. But there was once upon a time peoples who normalized that relationship and built that reality into their language, into their traditions, and into their practices, and we've lost a lot of that. But I'm a subscriber to that, and I'm trying to bring it back through my work. And animism really just means that you have a worldview or a reality which makes room for non-human consciousness and non-human agency and non-human intelligence in the world, even sometimes the forms that you can't see as visible. Like when people say spring is in the air, or there was a dark mood, or there was a triumphant spirit, we can be in relationship with things that are non-tangible. And one of the forms of that subscription is astrology. Now, I'm not a fan of magazine astrology. I think today, if you're a Pisces, the message for you is you're going to meet somebody is going to give you a surprising message that you hadn't thought about in a long time. I think that's largely exactly as it sounds, a big load of crap. But Hellenistic astrology, that they rediscovered now and rediscovered all the veracity and the sense making of it all. It never doesn't claim to be causal. It's not saying that planets are moving in the sky and therefore causing my mood. It's saying they're divinatory. There's a relationship, a symmetry in the world between the way that you can see and observe certain things happening, and then you can see a symmetry resonating inside human behavior or inside our own personal sense of identity or relationship with the world. I subscribe to that quite sensibly. And the astrology of the moment, I have no doubt that that's affecting me, and I don't want to get too much into that because I'm not really an astrologer and I wouldn't do it justice. But Chetan's on the call now, and Chetan and I were talking yesterday about this difficulty that we have living two lives. All of us live two lives. We live in two worlds, we can say. We live, let's, for argument's sake, live the world of our work in a corporate world. This is one version of ourselves that we need to keep alive. And it's all, if you have watched the show Severance, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's almost like we have a whole persona and a repertoire of conversation and a form of thinking, almost like a different psychological language and posture that we adopt to be real in that space. And I used to have that when I worked in the corporate world. And then my own private life became my second life, my inner life, something more spiritual perhaps. The way that we reflect on things, the way that we engage with meaning very deeply, that we can't always articulate and share and doesn't always track in that first life. And it got me thinking, actually, that my second life has become my first life. My more inner spiritual life is actually my first world that I belong to. It's my real life. Yeah. And then my public persona, or just the trivial minutiae that I have to do when I've got to go to the shop and pick up bread, or I've got to go and drop Maya off at school, or I've got to go and renew my license at the licensing department, or something arbitrary. That always is such a rude adjustment for me. So what we've just had at home is little Maya was off for 5 days, and then my wife was also off for 5 days from work. Now, my wife in this arc of our life is actually the breadwinner at home, and I'm trying to make magic happen through this through this Better Way project and all of the other studies and writings and things that I've been doing, which don't sound awfully coherent in this live video, but I promise you it is. And Chetan can attest to that. But in making that adjustment, I had to put my work down, and then I had to go over and suddenly immerse myself. And we had people over for dinner, and we were barbecuing. Yeah, this is all I've got today, Chetan. And we were barbecuing, and we were doing shopping, and we were organizing day trips, and it was off to the zoo, and then it was off to the movies one day. And I took that time, basically most of it, away from my work. And my two lives, my two worlds are so completely juxtaposed. There's so little relationality between the two that when I go back to my work, my philosophy and my hermetics and my animism and my, the wisdom pieces that I'm writing and the philosophy pieces that I'm writing and a universal theory of everything, I panic because I can't figure out where to pick up the threads and keep going again. And it's not a new feeling for me. And I suddenly realized, talking to Chetan yesterday, that this is a common thing, is that when I'm busy in my first life or my first world, my wife comes and sort of knocks at the door and she says, "It's time, come, it's dinner time now, come, what are you doing?" And then I've quickly got to drop this and I've got to rush and grill some chicken on the barbecue, and I've got to make sure Maya gets a feed in her. And I suddenly go into logistics, dadding mode, right? And I don't put my work down with grace, and I don't put it down like a captain's log and say, okay, this is where you were, Rocco, and this is what you were working on, and this is what you were caring about, and this is what you were just about to crack the case of. And so I just drop it unceremoniously, and I kind of scramble to play catch up in my second life, in my second world. And I do that badly because I'm kind of scrambling and rushing. And then the pressure starts building because I know I've got to get back into my work and I've got to make magic happen. And I've been unsuccessful up until now, and the money is not coming and the traction is not coming. And of course the panic comes, yeah. And it's exacerbated when I sit down and I try to pick up my work again, because if you're like me, there's 10 excellent ideas just traveling through my brain and my mind all the time. And so I don't know which of these 10 threads I want to pick up. And what do I do? Every single time I get so anxious and nervous that I scrabble for the next bright thread in the dark. And I go and download a new thing to start working on. And I pull this thread down and then I immerse myself in that. But now look at what happens over a period of time. And don't we all have this? We live these two lives, however our lives are split, and we don't have any ritualized way of handing off between the one life and the other life. And so we do it in this scrambling, messy way. And as such, we never leave healthy, wholesome placeholders. Our work in one life doesn't cohere, and our truth in the other life doesn't cohere. And then we feel incoherent and scrambling across both. And that's exactly how I feel at the moment. So what I've cottoned onto and what I'm working on now and what we're going to be putting through a Better Way is, how do I ritualize that? I don't mean in an over-the-top form of way, but how do I make a small little change in my habits, like keeping a captain's log, like Jean-Luc Picard on the Star Trek, to say, Rocco's log day, whatever, this is where I was, this is the article I was working on, these were the ideas, this is the user story that I was trying to progress. This is the part of the project that I'm working on that I was trying to complete. And I need to put that down in a graceful, mindful way, in a slightly organized way. And then I need to clear my cache. Like when you're browsing on the internet and something isn't working because forms are filling themselves out wrong and things are not refreshing. The problem is you need to clear your cache, because inside your memory and your psychological settings and your nervous system settings are all wired for a certain kind of framing. And they're up in suspension in memory, in your subconscious in that way. And then you go and try and make yourself useful and you're not really present there either, because it's like browsing on a different website with the cache settings from a previous browsing session. Of course, there's going to be this incoherent confusion. And so you can't just clear your cache. You actually have to draw that down and say, oh, some of this belongs in long-term memory and some of this belongs in offline memory. Like I've actually got to write this note down and keep little breadcrumbs for myself so that I can suspend this life in some sense of order, so that when I come back to it, I'm not coming back to it like Theseus in the labyrinth going, where the fuck do I start pulling the thread from again? Because I've been doing that for years. And to my own amusement and slight shame, I'm humbled to realize that with all of my sense making, I've been so unskillful in swapping between my two lives. And I thought, we're all caught like that. That movie Severance is literally an explanation of, it's a satire of how we're all doing that. Sorry, wind's blowing the camera over. It's a satire about how we're all experiencing that. So maybe if my little rambling today can do anybody any favors, it's to make you stop and think about the two worlds that you inhabit and how you don't really even give yourself the opportunity to transition between those two. And we're trying so hard to practice integration and actualization and authenticity without making room for the reality that we're actually required to be two authentic versions of ourselves. And it's hard. It's so hard. And it's harder if you're not aware of that, just that necessity. It doesn't mean you're disingenuous. It means that you couldn't choose the way reality is shaped out there. And so you have to basically, out of necessity, you have to function intelligently and maturely and sensibly in the paradigm or the context that those people can. And so you kind of have to switch gears all the time. Chetan says, you're right, Rocco. This is a relatable way to understand and experience so many of us are having right now. And I know you'd be having it as well. Sean, you have control over your time. That's important. Why do you need to wear another mask? It's so that's a good question, Sean. So when I'm, even though I have control over my time, I don't have mastery over my time. My time is not always my own. So suddenly if I'm working and I hear my daughter, my 3-year-old crying and my wife's on a work call, I don't have I can't take that persona that I had and suddenly push it over her. I have to adopt a different kind of stance psychologically, and in my presence, I have to show up differently for my kiddo because she literally needs that. And if I go out to the shops to go do something, it's not that I have to put a mask on to hide my true self, but I have to put a posture on so that I can communicate with normal people in a normal way. Otherwise, all of those interactions become difficult and strained. And I don't want to be unpleasant in the world either. And there's just this difference. There is just this, they're not the same. I wish they were, and I wish life was such that I could be the same everywhere. That would actually be the greatest source of peace and comfort for me. But I'm not determining the norm, and I can't enforce my norm over everybody else's. I have to adapt. Like when we have people around for dinner, I've got to bring myself down to the appropriate level of energy and conversation that's in the room. I mean, how's it going to sound if it's not that, I don't know if that answers your question, Sean. You have control of your time. That's important. Why do you need to wear another mask? I don't need to hide myself. I need to be relatable to other people as a form of congeniality or kindness or adaptability. My wife needs that. My wife needs that from me. She comes out of a corporate desk job into the same kitchen that I come out into in the end of the evening, and we have to make it work for Maya. We have to hold a space that everyone can feel comfortable in, and I feel I have an adjustment to make when I do that. And really, my point was I don't do that with a lot of, I don't do that skillfully, because I tend to drop this in an unceremonious way and then try to come back to it and then panic when I don't know quite how to pick that stuff back up again, and vice versa. Maybe it lands, maybe it doesn't. Let me know if it does or doesn't, Sean, because I'd like to know. Yeah, but that's all I've got today. I'm going to walk up the hill now and get a little coffee. You've noticed that I wasn't coughing and phlegming the whole time. That's because in the mornings I like to have a coffee, and as soon as I have that, I drink oat milk. And as soon as I have it with oat milk, it doesn't really agree with my body and I start coughing. So I really should, if I'm going to do any live work or recording work, I'm quickly realizing I should do it before I eat or before I drink anything. All right, folks. I don't know if I've been, I don't know how incoherent that ramble was, but it was raw and it was real. And Sean, if you've got anything to say after that, I'd love to hear it. I still don't know if what I answered landed, but c'est la vie. And I'll be here for day 13 tomorrow and see if I've got more pep in my step then. All right, folks, take care.